our Belgian Grand Prix.
F1 driver ratings. This video is sponsored by the wonderful people at Squarespace.
Driver ratings. We are here to dive into everybody's race, every single one of them, and rate not just the Sunday, but the Saturday as well, and of course the Friday, because we had a sprint weekend. Lots to try and take into account, Tommy. So could make for some interesting grades.
Indeed, sprint ones are always chaotic in how you position it, but looking forward to diving into this one. A lot of, not a huge amount of action on track, but still a lot to dissect from each person's race, I think.
Let's get into that first driver, Gabriele Bortoleto, who started the sprint in 10th, finished 9th, started the main race in 10th, finished 9th. And it's going to be a 9 out of 10 for Gabriele Bortoleto this weekend. I think it was a thoroughly impressive, consistent performance throughout the weekend, not just the sprint, where, of course, narrowly missed out on points, but then to make Q3... Hulkenberg very much the man of the moment from Silverstone, but it was Gabby that was really good, and to score a couple of points in a race that overtaking was difficult. We had treacherous conditions. He's a rookie. I feel like he deserves the plaudits of a 9 out of 10.
I have also gone for a 9 out of 10 for Gabriele Bortoleto. I think had Sauber not got 43 points in the Constructors' Championship, this would probably be a 10 out of 10. But
had
we
Hulk
know
not got a podium last time out.
Exactly. The bar has moved for Sauber for sure, but that does not take away from what Bortoleto had. I think this is his strongest weekend as a driver. You know, he had that great race in Austria, but here he has got into Q3 twice when his teammate hasn't. And finished both races in a lovely P9. Yeah, a brilliant job from him.
The fans agree. They've gone for a 9 out of 10 as well. Nico Hulkenberg started the sprint in 17th, finished the sprint in 18th, started the main race in 14th, finished 12th.
I have gone for a 5 out of 10 for Nico Hulkenberg.
Deliberating a little 5 or 6 there. Was it between that and that, or was it a 4 or 5?
Maybe even 4 or 5. But no, I don't think it's that bad, because he was on for points, wasn't he? And they made that call. I mentioned it in the main podcast. I think it was very much the wrong call, but he was disappointing in qualifying, and in conditions where he normally excels, couldn't really do much. A disappointing one for Hulkenberg based on what happened last time, but he can't have a podium every week.
I have also gone for a 5 out of 10 for Nico Hulkenberg. I was deliberating, how much can I put it on him for pitting, but it was kind of his decision. He said that just couldn't make the end, which I don't know if it's worth. Surely it's worth the risk. I know he feels like the tyres are going off. So it just kind of solidified him not scoring any points. He was flying through at the start of that last stint, but can't overtake. And you kind of very much signed not scoring points with the Gasly train that was in P10. So a very anonymous, poor qualifying weekend from Hulkenberg, and that kind of just solidified no points. So it's a 5 out of 10 from me. The fans gave him a 5 as well.
Are you looking to launch a passion project, showcase your business, or finally create the website you've been dreaming of? With Squarespace, you get an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to get online, no matter your experience level. I've been using Squarespace, and it's an absolute game changer. Their cutting-edge design tools are fantastic. Whether you're customizing templates or using their AI-powered blueprint tool to get your site up in just a few clicks, the possibilities are endless. Plus, with Squarespace's built-in payment options, managing everything from online stores to services is completely seamless, all while accepting payments on your terms. It's so easy to integrate appointment scheduling and email marketing, helping you stay connected with your audience effortlessly. Simply lovely. Ready to create your own website? Head to squarespace.com/P1 to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/P1.
Alex Albon started the sprint in 16th, finished 16th, started the main race in 5th, finished 6th. So this is one of those drivers that has a tale of two halves, quite literally, from the sprint where it was a disaster to the main race. But the main race has to have the full weighting, and it was such an impressive main race that I'm giving him a 9 out of 10, straight up. It's a phenomenal qualifying, still beat Hamilton in the race, despite Hamilton charging through the field with his great strategy. And I can't downgrade him any more than that. Of course, if the sprint had been a bit more chill and maybe he'd even scored a point, then perhaps it was even a 10. But sadly, I have to knock it off slightly for the sprint. But Albon did phenomenally well. He had a lot of pressure from Hamilton as well. It's not as if Hamilton was kind of chilling 5 seconds behind. He was having to deal with that pressure for a lot of it. And I think he maximised what he could on the Sunday. So it's a 9.
Yeah, I've gone for a 9 as well. I think Albon's result in the main race, that's the one where you want to score your best result, and he absolutely did, and he got everything out of that car. If that had just been the Grand Prix, he's getting, a 10 out of 10 here, but of course the sprint was a disappointing one, but if you're going to have a disappointing race, it might as well be the sprint. So an amazing job again from Alex Albon after Williams have had a bit of a tough run.
Certainly. The fans gave Alex Albon an 8 out of 10. Carlos Sainz started the sprint in 6th, finished 6th, started the main race from the pit lane, finished 18th.
I have gone for a 7 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. I think he had a great sprint, and I'm not going to be too harsh on the race result in terms of the fact that he finished 18th, because unfortunately for a lot of runners, people were just stuck in a train, weren't they? And they just tried something different just to hope, because otherwise it's that or gets something, or just be stuck in an Ollie Behrman train for the entire race. So that really, he gambled. Obviously, he had the pit lane start. But I've got to reward him for that fantastic sprint. And unfortunately, unlike his teammate, this one came in the one that scores less points, but it's still some good points on the board for Williams.
I completely agree with your take on this one. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 as well. You have to give a nod for the 6th place in the sprint. That's 3 points. So it's kind of like finishing 8.5 in the main race.
Yeah, which is still a good result.
So, yeah, it's a great result for the sprint. Fantastic qualifying. He sort of slapped himself on the wrist, I think, for changing some setups or changing the setup ahead of the main part of the weekend, which cost him a lot of time. And yeah, he was pretty screwed from the get-go. But yeah, the sprint definitely deserves something higher than sort of like a 5. So 7 from me. The fans gave him a 6. Isaac Hadjar started the sprint in 9th, finished 8th. Started the main race in 8th, finished 20th. So this one is quite hard to grade, because you'd think 20th, that's a 2 out of 10 map. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Hadjar, and this is my reason why. He made Q3 in both qualifying sessions. He scored a point in the sprint, and his car was basically broken the entire race, from what I have heard, and what he has said afterwards is that he felt powerless. The car felt good in the sense of probably grip levels, but he was just getting overtaken left, right and centre, and felt like having a result like Lawson was very possible. Obviously, I can't rate him the same as Lawson, but I'm going to give him a slight benefit of the doubt by the fact that every session where his car wasn't apparently broken, he was well within the top 10.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a 7 for Hadjar, because I think he was having, had a brilliant sprint, qualified well again for the main race, and then he got a little bit. He was one of those unfortunate drivers, and a few of these have happened where they pitted a lap later than their teammate, which made it obviously difficult for them. And I hadn't really thought about this until I heard that he had that issue. But of course, we had that replay of Lewis Hamilton flying past him like Hadjar. And that explains a lot now, because Hadjar literally looked like an F2 car in that replay.
Yeah,
how slow
so
he was
true,
going.
actually, because we thought maybe it was like grip differences, but surely not.
Surely Hamilton's not that much quicker on the dries. But that shows what a problem he was having. So I think he could have had a good result. And every session his car worked, P9, finishing P8, and then qualifying P8 again. He's done a great job, so I'm not going to be too harsh on him.
Okie dokie, the fans gave him a 5. They are not happy with his performance or his car's performance. Liam Lawson started the sprint in 11th, finished 10th, started the main race in 9th, finished 8th.
I have gone for an 8 out of 10 for Liam Lawson. A sprint where didn't manage to score points like his teammate, but then in the main race he did. He's having much better form now. I think he's over this. It seems like he's over this slump and he's delivering some good performances now. And this is maybe what we thought, that when he was demoted, whether you call it demoted, to Racing Bulls, you kind of thought he'd slot in a car that he's much more comfortable with and he'd show what he could do. And I think he's doing that again now. So a good drive from Liam Lawson.
Yep, an 8 out of 10 from me as well for Lawson. It's so good to see for him that he's been able to pick himself up after what was incredibly challenging mentally. The things, breaking down at Red Bull and a few things to come out of the camp when he was there for those few races, and you did wonder, how does he come back from this? But as much as Red Bull are savage, there are some remarkable sort of bounce back stories, aren't there, from losing that second seat drive? Not just Lawson on the grid that has managed to do that. But yeah, I think it was a very strong race from him. He was very quick. I don't think he wasn't. It's not like he went for the hero strategy like Hamilton. He did pit later than that and still managed to get a good result. So yeah, Lawson, 8 out of 10 from me. The fans gave him an 8 as well. Ollie Bearman started the sprint in 7th, finished 7th, started the main race in 12th, finished 11th. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10 for Ollie Bearman. It was a good weekend. The sprint was great. Of course, his teammate did a little bit better, so you have to take that into account as well, that there was speed in the Haas. And I was really fancying my chances for Ollie Bearman in the main race with just how he was looking forward to the wet race and everything else that was going on. And then the FIA didn't start the race until it was basically pretty much dry. So all of those runners that have risked it with the wet setup were kind of shafted by, whether it's intentionally or not, whatever, they were shafted by the fact that the race started later than perhaps some of us believe it should have. But that being said, I think Bearman is starting to show some signs of form and colour and potential, and I'm liking what I'm seeing from my good surprise of the season. So keep it up, but I still need that breakthrough performance, please.
I've gone for a 7 as well. Very much a good performance, but not great, and I think could have been great again. But he just missed out in the Grand Prix qualifying, where he looked very, very quick, and had he got a position on the grid like he did in the sprint, it was so difficult to overtake. We could have seen a double points finish, but of course he was stuck in the Gasly train. He has finished 11th in 4 consecutive races now, which is so unlucky. 1 place outside the points.
The fans gave him a 7 as well. Esteban Ocon started the sprint in 5th, finished 5th, started the main race in 11th, finished 15th.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. The gamble in the race didn't work. He went for the low drag, pitted later. He was staying out. He was in that probably one of the only majorly exciting moments of the race, where him, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen and George Russell were like side by side going through Blanchimont. But it didn't work out, and again he was another one that just tried something. But I can't not give him an 8, because he finished 5th in a Haas and qualified 5th in a Haas. And I know it's the sprint where less points, so it's not going to be, a 9 like an Alex Albon. But to qualify 5th in a Haas and finish 5th in a Haas deserves a huge amount of credit. A fantastic result, even if it is the race where you score less points.
Interesting. I have gone for a 7 out of 10 for Ocon, mainly because, of course, the sprint he did better than Bearman. The main race he did quite a bit worse. Of course, the strategy was wrong, but that's a driver call, as we've seen with the likes of Hamilton and co, making huge amounts of places by risking it and sort of dealing with those conditions. It was the wrong call from Ocon and the team to carry on. As and also, yes, but as you said, Spa for like half a lap, just forgot that it was boring. It was like, oh, we're gonna have 5 wide, go into the last sector. We absolutely love to see it. So thank you, Ocon, for that. But I can't upgrade you any more than a 7, and that's what I'm going to lock in. The fans gave him a 7 as well. Franco Colapinto started the race from the pit lane, finished 19th, and started the main race 15th, finished 19th. Not good reading if you're a Colapinto fan. I've gone for a 3 out of 10 for Colapinto. It just feels like it's a rinse and repeat at the moment. I was having a look at kind of where he was running prior to that additional pit stop, but he still was languishing towards the back and just not quite where Colapinto needs to be. You know, the fact that he had 2 competitive sessions, maybe 1, he could get in the mix, changeable conditions, the great leveler, this, that and the other, but we're not really seeing it. And he's not the only rookie to have struggled. Of course, we have Antonelli to talk about a little bit later, but I'm going to go for a 3. The 3 is kind of a nod to him being a rookie, otherwise it'd probably be a 2.
I've gone for a 4 for Franco Colapinto. I think he struggled for race pace, but I don't think his result tell the whole story personally. And look, I'm still giving him a 4 out of 10. It's a bad result. But what I want to say is I think he's being unfairly branded as this like ridicule, absolutely awful driver, like he's worse than Mazepin, when I don't think that is true at all. And people giving him like 1 out of 10 every single week in driver ratings, because for me, he's 0.2 off Gasly in qualifying, and then he stays out. He was, I think, like a 1.5 seconds behind him before the pit stop, so he's not done horrendous. And then, obviously, he's still done bad enough that he's dropped down the order when he's stayed out longer. But I do think he's getting unfairly sort of criticised, and I understand people's frustrations because he's not lived up to the expectation which warrants Jack Doohan's firing. So I understand people's frustration there. But equally, I don't think he's doing like so unbelievably terrible that he should be like spoken about like the next, Mazepin or something, which a lot of people seem to think.
That being said, yeah, I agree. He's not a Mazepin. He's not this ridiculous pay driver that doesn't deserve to be in Formula One, but he also isn't matching up to where he should and probably could be. The fans gave him a 2. Pierre Gasly started the sprint in 8th, did not finish, or didn't start actually, and then started the main race in 13th, finished 10th.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. I think he's done a great job to get a point in the main race. Left a bit on the table in qualifying, I think. But I think he's desperately unlucky that he didn't start the sprint as well, because we could have very easily seen a double points score from Gasly in terms of scoring points in both races. But alas, he was very unlucky there. So Gasly continuing to do great things in a car that I do truly think is terrible, and it is being reflected by being last in the Constructors now quite comfortably.
I think that's a very fair thing. I was going to go with a 7, but I think I'm trying to just reconfigure my brain that Alpine is probably the 9th or 10th fastest car. At least they were this weekend. And as you say, the Constructors matches up with the fact that they have been the slowest team across the season. Yes, 8 out of 10 for me for Gasly. It's a great drive. The fact that he's scored a point, I think that even his social media comments highlight that I think he said he's going to sleep well tonight or something like that. Like, he knows that he hard grafted that one to score a point. And I think, anything lower than an 8 is a bit unfair for the drive that he put down in a car that is pretty shocking. 8 from me. The fans gave him a 7. Lance Stroll started the sprint in 15th, finished 13th, started the main race in 16th, finished 14th. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. I think it was okay. That's what I'm going to say for Lance Stroll. Aston Martin, and the reason why I've gone for a 5, look, he's not been anywhere near the points, but Aston Martin were horrendous in qualifying, absolutely awful, and whatever upgrades they brought did not work. So they were one of the slowest teams on the grid. But that being said, changeable conditions, Lance Stroll, that's usually where he starts spawning in places. British Grand Prix being a good example of that. But that did not happen, so I've gone for a 5.
I've gone for a 4 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. Nothing really to shout about. The Aston was poor this weekend, but yeah, I put the same as you really, that these are the conditions, particularly at the start of the race, where Lance Stroll normally does something special in. Very surprised that he wasn't the first person to gamble like he has done a long way in the past and then spawned into like 7th place. Like, you saw how much Hamilton was rewarded by doing something like that. So, a weekend to forget for Aston Martin for sure.
I guess the reason why I went for a 5 is the fact that a lot of the time we have 2-3 DNFs. Everybody finished. So like a 14th place, he's beaten quite a few drivers, whereas usually you'd inherit some, and that's why I think I'd clarify that one. The fans have gone for a 4. Fernando Alonso started the sprint in 14th, finished 14th, started the main race from the pit lane and finished 17th.
Copy and paste everything I said about Lance Stroll. It's a 4 out of 10. Aston Martin, they're nowhere, but like Stroll, Alonso is known for being great in these conditions. And while I think Aston Martin were poor this weekend, they're still in a very close midfield. And I do think the talents of Stroll and Alonso in these conditions maybe could have done something, but they didn't. So I've gone for a 4 for both of them.
Interesting. I can't give Alonso the same grade as Stroll, so I've gone for a 4 out of 10 for Fernando, who was beaten by his teammate in both the sprint and also the main race. So I got to give Lance Stroll some commendation for that, as much as it's a 5 and a 4, so I don't think they'll be exactly celebrating that. But very off-colour Fernando Alonso this weekend. Really didn't see anything from him at any point, and I really hope for his sake the Hungaroring, completely different track, where he of course defended like a lion, he can come back and start scoring points again, because the Aston sort of trajectory is so up and down at the moment, it's ridiculous. 4 out of 10 from me. The fans gave Fernando a 4 as well. Kimi Antonelli started the sprint in 19th, finished 17th. Started the main race from the pit lane, finished 16th. I've gone for a 2 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli. Yes, he is a rookie. Yes, I've said this before. But the thing is, it was a dreadful weekend from Antonelli. And we also have to remember he's in a Mercedes, which is the 4th fastest car this weekend. Russell finishing in 5th. Just one to forget again. It feels like we're saying this quite a lot at the moment. Maybe the setup just did not suit his driving style in these really difficult conditions. Of course, they went for quite low wing. There were mistakes there. Of course, he hurt the floor when he made that mistake in qualifying, and then from there it just went downhill. Really no positives to talk about for Antonelli, so I've gone for a 2.
Yep, I've gone for a 2 out of 10 for Antonelli as well. Awful weekend. Even though he is a rookie, you kind of, once you make that mistake in the first sprint, you think, you've got another opportunity, and instead, got knocked out again. So really poor weekend, and we know how difficult it is to overtake. So of course he could go absolutely nowhere. And one to forget for sure.
The fans gave Kimi a 3. George Russell started the sprint in 13th, finished 12th, started the main race in 6th, finished 5th.
I've gone for a 7 for George Russell. He was driving the 4th fastest car, probably, and he is finished kind of in that position behind, a Charles Leclerc. The sprint was disappointing. He believes he had damage and couldn't really do much from there. But we've seen George in the past over-deliver what that Mercedes can do, and I don't think he did that this weekend. It's certainly not a bad drive, but it's got to be a 7 from me.
I agree. I've gone for a 7 as well. It's one of those performances that Mercedes have every so often where they're just nowhere near the McLarens, the Ferraris, and the Red Bull. And it's just... It's one of those. It's so difficult to grade because Russell may well have just driven the absolute socks off of a very difficult Mercedes, but we have to judge him on where he's finished as well. And I think he even said that it flattered the P5 was probably flattering of the real pace of the car, and said that he got the maximum possible. So the fans gave George a 7 as well. Yuki Tsunoda started the sprint in 12th, finished 11th, started the main race in 7th, finished 13th. Oh, what could have been? What could have been? I am going to give Yuki Tsunoda a 6 out of 10. purely because of the quali and the absolutely, speaking of stinking run of form Yuki has had since joining Red Bull. That was a moment where we thought, yes, here we go. He's done it. We're back. He's got the new floor like Max. He's got equal cars. Let's go. But sadly, the strategy didn't work for him. He stayed out a lap later, and apparently there was a miscommunication with the team, and they called it way too late, and that really affected his race, and very much a what could have been, because Tsunoda was looking like he had a handle of that car this weekend. So I can't give him any more than the 6.
Yeah, I've gone for a 6 for Tsunoda as well. More promising signs in qualifying, and desperately unlucky that he just missed that pit stop, took an extra lap, and then that really, set him tumbling down the order, and then he was in the Choo-Choo Gasly train for the entire race. So he very much is going to be looking at that going, that was where I could have got, because I know Max is doing, you're never going to be able to compare to what Max is doing in that car, but a P7, based on how that second seat has gone, would have been absolutely sensational, really, it has to be said.
That would have been an 11 out of 10. I would have taken away Hulkenberg's.
Yeah, but alas, the call was wrong. But positive signs, I think, for Yuki.
Yeah, slight positivity. We like to see it. The fans gave Yuki a 6 as well. Max Verstappen started the sprint in 2nd, finished 1st, started the main race in 4th, finished 4th.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. It was a perfect sprint where we just saw the very best of Max Verstappen fighting 2 McLarens that were comfortably the quickest car, and he managed to beat both of them. Shouldn't have managed to split them in qualifying, never mind win the sprint race. But that being said, he left something on the table, I think, in qualifying, and the race he should have beaten Charles Leclerc in that main race. P3 was definitely a possibility for him in qualifying, and then in the race, so difficult to pass, but had a few opportunities, just couldn't make it. So it kind of balances out for a 9 for me.
I will go for a 9 for Max because the sprint was absolutely sensational, and I have upgraded some drivers previously due to their great sprints, the Haas drivers being one of them. So yeah, I'll go for a 9. So it's a low 9, but we don't do those here. Because I think he did leave something to be gained, both in qualifying and the race. I'm surprised that he didn't get through on Leclerc. Perhaps it's that wonderful respect they have for each other, and Max just don't want to go anywhere near Charles. They just dance on the track. They don't go anywhere near each other. And Max didn't get through, which I think everybody watching thought it was a matter of time. Even without DRS, it just looked like Charles was struggling massively in comparison to Max in those slippery conditions at the start. So yeah, 4th is, for Max's standards, pretty underwhelming, but that Red Bull was nowhere near the McLarens this weekend. So a 9 out of 10 from me. The fans gave him a 9 as well. We move to Lewis Hamilton. Started the sprint in 18th, finished 15th. Started the main race from the pit lane, finished 7th. Did Hamilton want to make this any more difficult to grade? I am going to lock in a 6 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. Now, some people might be like, Matt, what are you talking about? He's gone from the pit lane to 7th. Yes, it was completely and utterly his fault. It was completely his responsibility to make it through Q1. Obviously, he had that error in the sprint, which was the spin, but also had track limits in the main qualifying, which again is driver error. It's marginal, but it's driver error. So it's on him. Don't get me wrong. There was some amazing strategy calls from Hamilton. I think some of that being sort of caused by the fact he was so far back. So Hamilton loves a big strategy decision, and that was great, but he finished 7th. He still finished behind Albon, had a really poor sprint and a really poor both qualifying sessions, as I say. So I can't give him any higher than a 6.
I thought I was going to drop a hot take there, but apparently not, because I've gone for a 6 as well. I completely agree with you. I think Hamilton drove a brilliant Grand Prix to actually give us some entertainment. He showed his kind of veteran and just what a great driver he is by making that call and being able to do those overtakes early on. but Formula One is a results game, and his teammate has finished 4th in the sprint and then got on the podium. Hamilton's finished 15th in the sprint and finished 7th in the Grand Prix. And, yes, he's made some great overtakes and gone through the field, but, he's still finished behind someone like Alex Albon in a Williams, and equally
and the drive
not scored
he's
in the
done,
sprint.
And it's not like he's done in the race has upgraded him from probably what would have been a 3 to a 6.
Exactly, because he's and this is the thing that people always I know a lot of people get frustrated of, and when I see Formula One release their power rankings and they go, oh my god, this guy went from 18th to 2nd, how have you not given him this? It's like, yeah, but why was he 18th? Because he made a mistake. And equally, he made a mistake in both sessions.
Well, to be fair as well, actually, before we move on, Hamilton was only 2-3 seconds behind Charles after the whole big strategy call that Hamilton made. Of course, being stuck in a bit of traffic doesn't help him, but he was right there as well. And had he got through on Albon and those drivers, perhaps he would have had a better race. But still, I'm locking in 6 still. The fans have gone for a 7. Charles Leclerc started the sprint in 4th, finished 4th, started the main race in 3rd, finished 3rd.
I have gone for a 9 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. It's a high 9. It's a high 9.
Delivering a little 10 there, bro.
But I do, and maybe it's a victim of his own success, but, these drivers can elevate themselves even further. But that's not to take anything away from Charles. I think this is much more like him to deliver the best possible result. This is what he's known for. I think he's had a bit of a tricky patch recently, and maybe that's overdriving the car and his frustrations with how he's not being able to fight for wins and things. But I think this race, sprint is solid, finished 4th, was never going to beat Lando. Of course, got ahead of him in the sprint, but was never going to hold a McLaren behind him. But he could hold Max behind him in the main race, and a podium is a fantastic result. So gone for a 9 for Charles.
I've also gone for a 9, as much as I'd love to give him a 10, and it's very close to 1. You have to reserve the 10s for really awesome performances. Charles was quite awesome. I don't know how you would slightly downgrade it to a 9.9, which maybe is just where I'm sat. But it's a 9 out of 10. It was a really, really solid weekend from Charles. It's a shame to hear him say that these are really good laps that he's putting down, because I know that really good laps in the past would have been Charles Leclerc on pole position. So for him to be starting 4th and 3rd in qualifying with great laps that he's really happy with, that's why my delusion levels are lower these days, is because it's just very hard to beat the McLarens and to beat Max on his day sometimes. But he did really well to hold off Verstappen. Could have easily just let Max go and thought about the Delta times, as we discussed in the main race podcast. But no, he knew that his car was going to be much more suited to the dry conditions, and he showed that. And I wouldn't say comfortably held on, because Max was right there, but he still did for P3, and very happy about that. The fans gave him a 9-2. Moving to the McLarens, Oscar Piastri started the sprint in 1st, finished 2nd, started the main race in 2nd, finished 1st. It's going to be a 10 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. Absolutely, categorically. Some people felt like I wasn't giving Oscar his day in the main race podcast. I don't really recall that. I think that he drove a phenomenal job. And I will say this right here, right now, that he made those medium tyres work excellently well. Of course, there is a level of frustration I think we have as fans to see those mediums go as long, and we wanted to see a battle. We didn't, because Oscar was able to keep those tyres in a great window. Showed in those last couple of laps as well that he had a little bit more in the locker, and showed that with, I think, a personal best lap with 2 laps to go. And Oscar, looking at lap 1 as well, because I know I got cooked in the main race podcast for lap 1. I'll talk a little bit more about that with the Lando grade. But for Oscar, he wasn't able, he didn't get caught napping. Lando tried to go really early before we even got started, right? We spoke about the safety car restart. Oscar was on him the moment Lando decided to go, which was a questionable moment, as we know. And to then have the minerals, I'm going to use it, the minerals to stay as close as he did through Eau Rouge and up Radion, allowed him to make the move stick. And that was the race-winning move. I think it would have ended completely differently had Oscar not nailed it as much as he did. So yeah, it's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone for a 10 for Oscar Piastri as well. We can talk about Lando's mistakes when we get onto him, but Oscar Piastri deserves a huge amount of credit for his race, because realistically, he had, in these wet conditions, this is something we've mentioned of great drivers in the past, realistically, you kind of need to make a move at the first opportunity, because as soon as you're stuck in that spray and everyone's kind of settled into their rhythm, it is incredibly hard to overtake. Look at Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. So Oscar Piastri pretty much had one chance to get past Lando Norris to win the race, and he was already on the back foot because it was a rolling start, and yet he still managed to make the move, and I think he deserves a huge amount of credit for that. Then to, keep the tyres going like he did was impressive, but for me the most impressive part of his race was that start and how important it was to get past Lando Norris, because that's how he won the race, because then of course that gives him the better strategy. He can stop first, gets him on the road on the dries first, and then he's got a nice healthy lead to defend. And Piastri, I think Martin Brundle said this on the podcast, that when it gets to crunch time and the pressure really starts to ramp up in those final few races, Oscar's kind of very chill, extremely chill and calm head is going to pay huge dividends, because nothing seems to faze him.
I really want to have heart rate monitors for the drivers to see just what the difference is between Oscar and other drivers. Just like he'd just have a 50 BPM resting heart rate whilst he's going through Eau Rouge. But yeah, awesome stuff. The fans gave him a 10 as well. Lando Norris started the sprint in third, finished third, started the main race in first, finished second.
I have gone for an 8 out of 10 for Lando Norris. The sprint race, it was a bad qualifying, has to be said, way off Piastri's lap, which meant Verstappen got in between them. Had he not, maybe, Norris is in P2, maybe he has an opportunity to do what Oscar did to him in the main race. And then in the main race, I personally don't think it's too harsh to say that when you are on pole position and you have the dream scenario, essentially, of it being a rolling start, you don't even have to do a standing start. I think it's almost inexcusable to lose the lead. I think he should have held that lead, because he's got the advantage of being able to control the situation. He played it completely wrong going into the final chicane before the safety car restart, and then of course made a mistake anyway, which allowed Oscar to basically be pinned right on the back of him going up the corner. So even with that, that's before you even take into account that when he made his stop, it looked like he had quite a good strategy, and to his credit had good pace on those hard tyres, but little errors here and there all added up, and had he not made those, who knows, he might have been close to Oscar at the end. But too many errors for Lando in this race.
Okay, so before I get into my grade, I will just highlight the fact that the misinterpretation of the Zach Brown interview, there was one that I had watched, which was with Nico Rosberg, which was much less clear as to whether Lando had an issue, where he'd had the issue. Nico Rosberg was saying, so yeah, up the hill, up through Eau Rouge, yeah, is that where you... And then Zach Brown was like, yeah. So I've just taken that as fact. I think other people have seen the Ariana Bravo interview where Zach Brown goes, yeah, there was an issue with both the cars. And fair enough. If you thought I'd seen that one and I'd gone and said what I said in the main race podcast, I would also be slightly aggrieved.
To your credit, that interview came up on my Instagram feed afterwards, and I watched it and went, oh, I get why you said that now.
Do you know what I mean?
Because Nico Rosberg goes, oh, well, that will have cost Lando the win, wasn't it? And Zach Brown was kind of like,
he's nodding.
Yeah. He's nodding and going, yeah. So it's like, is it or isn't it? So
he then obviously there was then a follow-up about, what about Oscar? I think Naomi Schiff said, what about Oscar? And he was saying, we have to do some homework. There was some issue on Oscar's cars as well, but it just felt like they were two separate issues. So that I just wanted to clarify before we get into my grade. My grade, now that I've taken out the fact that there was no battery issue, and it was literally just a Lando mistake, is a 7 out of 10. There were too many mistakes this weekend from Lando, which we did highlight in the main race podcast, but the inexcusable part of losing the lead on lap 1 is one thing that I am downgrading him quite a bit for. You look back at the replay, he does lose the back end ever so slightly, and then the run through Eau Rouge and Radion, I think Oscar has taken a little bit more confidence through there, despite being in what is, I know it's the slipstream, but it's also the dirty air. Like, you have to have some serious confidence in yourself to be able to follow that close.
That's not spoken
1.
about enough. That he was literally. I've never seen a car just follow in the wet conditions as well, when the spray was that much, for him to just be pinned on the back of him. Exactly. Serious bravery.
That was a lot of credit for Oscar for sure. But yeah, for Lando to lose the lead, as you say, from a rolling start as well. The whole I don't think the mistake was necessarily the slight back end twitch he had out of turn 1. It was the restart. It was the restart as a whole, as I said in the main race podcast again, of just taking a different line. Don't start so early, because then you're in racing speed and you're putting more pressure on yourself to take the last chicane as you would, rather than just trundle everybody up there and then bolt, which is what Max does almost every single time. I can't remember the last time Max Verstappen, who is, I think, the example of how to do a safety car restart. I don't remember the last time he's bolted early, unless it's obviously hard corner, and then he uses the dirty air. I can't think of anything where there's a decent amount of slipstream to be had where Max goes that early.
I remember, it's funny you mentioned that, because I can literally picture it in my head now. I'm pretty sure it was Imola restart, and we said it on the watch along, of Max is going to get round that final corner and then just go, and that's exactly what he did. You don't allow people to follow you through the final corners, because when you're controlling the pace in wet conditions, you should never have allowed a car to be basically a tenth behind you. You should have a nice healthy gap when you're controlling the pace. So yeah, it was a big mistake, that one.
Yes, that was a big mistake. Hence one of my downgrades. Another one is the fact of the sprint qualifying as well, to be that far off Oscar, to allow Max. It was a massive gap, wasn't it? 6-7 tenths behind Oscar in sprint quali. Yeah. That is an enormous gap to your teammate. Of course, he took pole position, but then sadly lost that, as we've just mentioned. And then the mistakes, of course, trying to catch up to Oscar was accumulative, probably the amount he needed to be on the back of Oscar with a lap or two to go. Not that he would have been able to overtake anyway. So there's my reasoning for a 7 out of 10 for Lando. The fans gave him an 8. So who is our P1? Well, it has to be Oscar Piastri. It has to be. It's a 10 out of 10. It's the only 10 out of 10 I've given across the entire field. So Oscar Piastri, congratulations. Many reasons to applaud him for this weekend, and I just can't wait to see how this goes into Hungary, where I think he might have some unfinished business. Even though he won last time out, he still has some unfinished business of maybe how to win Hungary.
Imagine the radio message that imagine he drops the win and then drops like a cold radio message after or something. But yeah, it's got to be Piastri. He's the only driver I've given a 10 to. Fantastic drive, huge kind of moment could be a significant moment in the championship, because of course, had he not made that move, we could have seen Lando getting 3 on the bounce and then pretty much being almost level on points. But instead, Oscar extends his lead and puts him in a great position to go into that summer break, leading the championship, going into those final rounds when it's very much squeaky bum time. So very exciting indeed.
Squeaky bum time indeed. We are well into the season now, past the halfway point. Of course, one more race until we head into the summer break. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. Please do post your very calm comments below, and we look forward to seeing you next weekend for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Of course, we'll be live on Twitch and YouTube as always, as well as all of our content, and we look forward to see you then.
Bye.
What's your final thoughts, Tommy? I forgot.
My final thoughts are bring on predictions, because it's going to be a fun one.
And my final thought is a 7 out of 10 doesn't mean he's the Mazepin. Bye!
Colapinto's not Mazepin either.
No, justice for Colapinto.
Yeah, that's my final thoughts.